Hello and assalamu alaikum. Today we're going to talk about what are the factors that when we use in order to decide business location, why it's such an important thing, and what is an optimal location, what are the factors for choosing business location, and relocation, what is relocation. So without further ado, let's begin. Choosing business location is very important. This decision is strategic in nature and taken at the highest management level. It should have flexibility to grow and expand and should sustain long term profitability. The location should be an optimal one as it is difficult to reverse this decision due to high cost of relocation. So the basic idea behind taking a business location decision is that it can't be reversed. You can't just sell your location or something. Unlike with machineries, okay, perhaps you might be able to sell it back to something at a lower price, of course, but you can at least sell it back or do something. And but and if you're hiring labor, then perhaps you can just dismiss them or make them redundant and hire new ones if you have made incorrect decisions or something regarding labor. But in location, it's not the case. Unlike capital and labor, you can't reverse this decision. So you should have a proper decision. A proper location should be decided when you are starting your business operations. So this decision is very strategic in nature and it is taken at the highest management level. You can't just give it to any supervisor or something. It is taken at the highest management level, and whatever the location you should choose, it should have the flexibility to grow and expand, because of course most businesses want to expand and increase their sales and have long-term profitability. Now, what is optimal location? The location should be an optimal one. Now, what is optimal location? Optimal location is basically having one location with all benefits. You know, having one location with all the benefits is very unlikely. Therefore, compromises need to be made. So, an optimal location is one thing that is the best for the business. That okay, it has its pros and cons, but the pros overcome the cons, and then you can have some profitability. There is some room for profitability, etc. So it's not like you are at a disadvantage. Of course, you can't find one location with everything that you want, but the disadvantage is that the cons that are there, that the things that are not available, the things that are such as rising cost perhaps, or not able to get high profits, they should be you know overweighed by something good. Like, if let's say if you are having high cost, then you should also be able to have good sales and high profits in that particular location. Like, maybe you say let's have a large group of consumer market in that particular area, and having your business should have a USP or something, because of which you can also get good profit margin and sales, not just because of the so you can counterweight counteract that particular cost decision, the high cost that exists. And vice versa could be something like, let's say you have cheap labor is available, which reduces cost, but like, okay, you have cheap labor, but your average income is also very low. So okay, your average income is low, you won't be able to charge high prices, but at least you have cheap labor, so you don't have any high cost either. So your profits will be not that high, but at least there will be something. Your cost is also low. So that's all about it. So examples, the first example that I just said, that cheap labor should be available, which will reduce costs, but lower average income is there at that particular location, so it's unlikely that high prices could be charged. So you have to think, okay, the cheap labor should be reduced and the average price should be enough for the business to satisfy their objectives, for them to have the sufficient profits that they want. Okay, they might not be able to charge high prices, so that means you can't have high profits either, but at least there should be some amount of profit made with the cheap labor thanks to the lower unit cost, which can overcome this not able to charge high prices point. So you could have at least some amount of profit that is able to meet your objectives. Perhaps there should be a balance of high fixed cost with convenience for customer and potential sales revenue, so that profits made could overcome the fixed cost involved. So that's the first one that I said, that if there are high costs involved, then you should have some more room for sales and revenue, so that sales revenue profits could be made, so that your cost could be overcome. And then finally, you can have something like limited supply of suitably qualified labor, maybe balanced with low cost of remote sites. So okay, you don't have any much qualified labor, but there's also the low cost of remote side, so you might be able to work with some unqualified labor as well, but thanks to the low cost of remote side you can have some good profits. Okay, but yeah, there will be some compromises made, so that's the whole idea behind optimal location. We don't have to look at much about that, but whenever you are given questions in exams in P2 especially, you might be asked to like decide what are the factors that our business have chosen. Like, okay, was some disadvantage, but what was the advantage that the business had because of which it switched to this, it chose this particular decision. So it was an optimal, every business location is an optimal location, so there should be something good about that as well, which will overcome the negative aspects of it. Now, factors which are used for deciding optimal location, they are quantitative factors and qualitative factors. Quantitative factors are such as capital expenditure, labor cost, sales revenue potential, availability to goods suppliers, and average income level. Now, capital and expenditure and labor costs basically decide your costs. How much will be your cost? How much will be the cash outflows that will take place? Capital expenditure such as like there should be good availability of electricity, etc. Everything should be there. There should not be much high capital expenditure. And if you want to know what's capital expenditure, etc., I will suggest you to watch the video of cash, first chapter of finance, that is introduction. Like, it's about cash, what is cash and how it is used. First chapter of, I think I'll add this video at the last lecture. It will be the last lecture of first chapter of finance. So I've not added it yet as of now when I'm recording this lecture, but by the time if you are looking at that, when you are viewing this course, maybe it's available. To check that out. If it's not, then you have to wait for some time. It will be available by 25 June something. Okay. So labor cost, possibility of labor intensive business. So if the labor cost is low, then you can have some labor intensive business and perhaps you will choose that side. But if labor costs are high, then you might switch to, you might not go for that particular decision because you are a labor intensive business. So since you are labor intensive business, labor costs matter a lot. But if you are capital intensive business, then it doesn't matter much about labor costs. Even if you can also work with high labor costs, but it's better to have as much low labor cost as possible. When we say labor cost, I don't mean like, of course you are the one who pay the employees, but this is something called a minimum average income. Minimum, you can say, income level or wages level that government has set up, that you can't pay your employees below that particular level. So that's the labor cost that we are referring to. Now, sales revenue potential is about the out cash inflows that comes place. Okay, there should be some good sales revenue potential. So if you can have some good sales, then that's why one of the reasons that you will choose that location. Availability of suppliers will also mean that, okay, you can have suppliers in time, on time, and at a cheaper price also, and good quality as well. Good quality will mean that you can attract more customers, and cheaper will mean that your costs will be reduced. But of course, there's no such thing as like perfect suppliers, but you can make use of some. It depends on the business, what sort of business it is, and what matters more, the quality or the cost, etc. Average income level should also be good enough. Yes, we just said that income level might be low, so when income level is low, you can't make much profits. But when if it's too high, then that means your labor cost will also be probably high. So that's something to consider as well. There are qualitative factors to consider, like safety of life and low crime rate. If it's not too good, if the country is not too safe, there is high crime rate, then you wouldn't choose that as your location. Room for expansion should be feasible unless it is a niche market. So there should be some room for expansion. When we say niche market, it's like niche markets don't generally need to grow or expand because they have a good, the customer base is already small and small targeted customers, so they don't need to grow in order to increase this, because if they grow, it's not likely that there will be an increase in sales. So there is not much useful for them to grow. So in such cases, it's better for them to be stay as it is. But general business who have mass marketing, then for those there should be some room for expansion so that they can increase their potential sales revenue. There should be ethical consideration, non-compliance to CSR, such as use of child labor. Like, if you're whenever the location you're choosing, you should see that what are the government policies there are. Like, if you are some business who wants to reduce your cost and you're using child labor, so you should see that if the government will allow it or not. So that should be okay, but yeah, that it's unethical and should be avoided. Standard of living of people, people living standard should also be good as well. Now, business relocation and what are the causes of relocation? Business relocation is about the movement of a business from one area or region to another. Basically, you're just changing your location, changing the place of production of a business. That's also what it could be defined as. Now, why would a business choose to relocate? There are a number of factors that can lead to this. So we're going to discuss some of these factors that I listed on, some of the important factors that I have thought of. So rising cost of an existing facility. So since your current location, there's like your costs are increasing, so might move to another location which may have low cost. When we say cost, there are a lot of costs involved. There's capital expenditure, there's revenue expenditure, there's labor cost, there's some day-to-day expenses such as the rents, the bills, electricity bills, and etc. So all these costs needs to be considered. Now, tax breaks or government incentives are available in different locations, so that means you can have some good startup capital perhaps, or like more capital for growth or something. So the cost will be reduced, or you can have some good cash inflows thanks to this. Tax breaks would be there, so you mean there will be less cash outflow. So because of that as well, business might decide to relocate. Growth which requires expansion on a new outlet or location. Expansion may not be possible due to various reasons such as pressure from society. So if you want to grow and there's a lot of sometimes it happens that you can't expand your business, perhaps due to customers there sorry competitors. There are a lot of competitors that even if you expand it won't make much good, or perhaps it's because of the pressure from society that society doesn't want you to expand because of the pollution it will happen, that the noise pollution or the harm that might be caused to the society. So they might not want you to grow and not allow you to. So because of that rising pressure, you might just decide to relocate your business so that you could grow it or expand it more. It should be the closest to the target market, that is moving closer to a large group of consumers. So if you think that there's a certain location where you could have more group of customers, then potentially your sales will increase and the cost of relocation will be overcome eventually and you will have good profits. So that's why also a business might decide to relocate. Now, there could be workforce issues as well, such as the unavailability of skilled labor. So, if skilled labor is not available, you might want to switch to some other area, relocate your business. But that's not always the case for businesses, because it depends on the business. If it's a labor intensive business, they require some skilled labor, such as like if it's a job production business, perhaps they want skilled labor, so they might switch. But if it's like flow production system, they don't need that much skilled labor, so they could work without that as well. But there could also be like increase in minimum wages set by government, so that's same thing. Like it all depends on the nature of the business, but if there is an increase in minimum wages set by government, then you might possibly switch to another area where the minimum wages is low, so that you can have low costs. Quality of life and political issues are also one thing, but they are not always the case. A business might also relocate to avoid trade barriers and establish better transport links. So trade barriers such as are sometimes restricting your exports, and also you can switch to another location where you can avoid your trade barriers and establish better transport links so that you can have overall good sales potential. And finally, you can move near to distribution channels or in close proximity to suppliers. You can relocate in close proximity to suppliers. It is especially useful for business using JIT, so stocks can be transported quickly from suppliers to the business as soon as it is ordered. No issues with delay in suppliers due to traffic jam, etc. Okay. So if you're using JIT, you should be as close to a supplier as possible, because there are some external factors that as well, like traffic jams and all, because of which your suppliers might be delayed and your customers might not be happy with the delayed order. So you need to have as your supplier should reach you as soon as possible. So if you're in close proximity to your supplier, then that's a good thing as well. So this is generally more applicable for a business using JIT. But generally as well, moving near to distribution channel is a favorable thing. That is also a good thing. So that's all about the causes of relocation, and we've talked about business location as well, the factors deciding it. So thanks for watching, and Allah Hafiz.